Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some ProRevenge. Please check out the KCC Discord linked in the description down below. There you can talk to me and a whole bunch of KCC fans who hang out there on a regular basis. I look forward to seeing you there. Our first story today comes to us from Dundas, dealing with the locker thief in high school. Let's jump right in. This was back in the early 2000s, probably 2003 to 2004 school year. Throughout the entire year, there was a crime wave of people having things stolen out of their locked lockers. Not everyone, but enough that everyone knew someone it happened to. The school's only defense about this was that it was our fault for sharing our locker combos with our friends. They also charged us every time we had to get the combination changed on a locker, like after a theft for instance, because it was assumed to be our fault. Well, I had my graphing calculator taken out of my locker. I also never gave out my combination to anyone, mostly because my friends were jackbutts and we pulled crap on each other all the time. So I was out $150 for the calculator and another $150 to change the combination, getting a locksmith to change out the lock. This is 2003 money, so it's a bit more than now. To anyone who has ever had to buy a TI-86 in 2003 or 2004, you'll know how much the things cost. Well, my dad was drinking buddies with one of the county detectives. I'll call him Detective Buddy and or Uncle Buddy. He went in to talk to the school about the string of thefts going on so he could get the security camera for the day my calculator went missing, and got completely brushed off as it was a non-existent problem, and he must have given out his locker combination. The principal told him he would need a warrant to get the camera footage. Then, when he got the warrant, the school fought the warrant in court citing student privacy. Cue the ProRevenge. Detective Buddy shows up at our house with a laptop in a laptop bag. He's like, "Throw this in your locker and tell everyone you know about your brand new laptop." Okay, sure, Uncle Buddy. 3 days later, I show up at my locker between classes and the laptop is gone. The bag too, nowhere to be seen, as is a 24-ounce bottle of Coke and possibly some pens. I take my phone out and text him that the laptop got taken. "Stand by for the crap show. Oh, and you reported the theft to the police, FYI, he replies back. Okay, I reply confused. I got about the rest of my day and I don't hear anything back. The following morning, Detective Buddy comes to the school with 3 uniformed officers and pulls a student, Dave, out of class, as well as his mom who works in the front office. The principal is pissed. I don't actually hear the cops, but the principal is pissed to no end that he had the audacity to accuse them of theft, and he couldn't just take them out of his school, etc., etc. Well, turns out there was a tracker in the laptop bag, and Uncle Buddy got a warrant to search the particular house. The laptop had a value of over $1,000, making it a felony. The next afternoon, he set up a tent with a table just outside of school grounds. He also had a banner across the top, "If you have had something stolen from your locker, see me." By the next morning, Dave and his mom made the paper. Apparently, Dave allegedly used his mom's login information to get onto the school network and get the locker combinations for basically everyone. Then, he just opened random lockers looking for valuables to steal if he didn't get info of a specific locker to steal from. When he set up the stand to get more people reporting thefts, he racked up an astounding number of charges. Each locker counted as a separate misdemeanor unless the stolen object was worth more than $1,000, in which case it was a felony. In less than a week, Uncle Buddy opened and broke an investigation and they charged Dave and his mom with 9 felonies and 35 misdemeanor charges. When I finally got the story from Buddy, he explained what the situation was. He had me stash a brand new laptop that had GPS tracking unit stuck in it in my locker, then get it stolen deliberately, and then he got a warrant to search the property it had been taken to. Now the fun thing to stress is that the laptop was over $1,000 value, pushing the theft from a misdemeanor into felony level. There was also another 8 felony charges, stuff like jewelry that was stolen from other people's lockers and recovered. So any of the locker break-ins that amounted to over $1,000 stolen was a felony charge and less than $1,000 was a misdemeanor charge. Cool thing was that because the calculator and the laptop were separate days, and the combination changed between the days, he caught a felony and a misdemeanor charge off me alone. The 9 felony thefts ended up in the $12,000 range total, and the 35 misdemeanor charges were somewhere in the range of $3,000 total in value. Now, that's an awful lot of stuff stolen, but I need to stress that this is only what was proven stolen. Like, this is what they caught him with in his possession that they could trace back to someone. They also didn't let them plead to anything. It was Podunkville's highest profile crime in years, and without a doubt, one of the worst crime sprees the county had seen in decades. Next up on the revenge, everyone who had been charged $150 to get their locker combinations changed sued the school district in a class action lawsuit. The justification was that the school did nothing to investigate the 44 proven and more than likely 200 plus cases of locker theft, and then charged money to get the locker combinations changed. There were 218 people in the class, and in total, everyone got $85 after attorney's fees. The principal also lost his job for being a bonehead and not bothering to attempt to deal with the massive problem that was reported to him going on at the school. The fun thing I need to point out is that the school brought in a locksmith to change out the locks. That's why they justified charging $150. Well, the school already paid the $150 a locker, but they also had to return $100 per locker, meaning that they were out $21,800 plus their legal fees for that class action suit. Next comes the criminal trial and the fallout. The prosecutor's deal was 10 years in prison, 5 in juvie and 5 in adult prison for Dave, and 15 for Dave's mom. Well, they refused that deal and it went to trial. Dave got 1 year prison for each felony, the state minimum, and 1 month probation for each misdemeanor, so 9 years plus 35 months of probation. His mom received 18 years of jail and 6 years probation. Having attended much of the best parts of the trial, I will say this. They had Dave on camera entering 20 plus lockers, and they had them in possession of stolen goods for every single charge they made against them. The judge was also not amused that there was likely other reported crimes that they got away with because they couldn't prove it or they weren't reported. Dave's mom got it worse. That was a fun sentencing to show up for. But the most important thing is that I got my graphing calculator back. It had my name engraved inside the battery compartment. I still have it, as well as a cool story to tell. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that this didn't happen in North America because, well, violent crimes here get less of a sentence than these guys did. Either this or it just didn't happen. But anyway, you guys can comment on that one down below. What do you think? Let me know. Do me a quick favor and take a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're actually not subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. This next story comes to us from Objective Uncone. Poaching threats and frogs. Lots and lots of frogs. Let's jump right in. This is another story about Pops, my grandfather, and how he got some sweet, sweet revenge done on squatters and poachers. This goes way back to the 90s, to be exact 1998. I was 10 years old. My farm back then was Pop's family farm. It's way up north in Ontario. My farm is not a small farm. In the area, it's the biggest plot of land. Not only that, it has the most workable farmland. There's about 80 acres of good workable farmland that's including pastures and another 120 acres of dense forest and marshland. It is Northern Ontario. Back in the 90s, Northern Ontario had a breakout of this type of moth. They would spin silk high in the trees. Really, they caused no harm other than a nuisance, but the government had the great idea to crop dust the forests in Ontario, causing an ecological disaster. With the loss of the moths and the chemicals in the water, a type of frog was nearly wiped out. We called them leopard frogs. They are green with these big black spots on them. After that, they were put on the endangered species list. The back end of my property runs off into a small marshland and into the lake. And back in the 90s, Pops was having a problem with poachers. They were camping in the back area, hunting out of season, killing and eating turtles out of the marsh and just effing up the property. Back in the day, that forest was my playground. I know that area like the back of my hand, but unfortunately, I had a run-in with the poachers. They threatened to harm a 10-year-old child. Of course, I went out there with Pops and our local lawmen, but they had packed up and were gone before we got there. Unfortunately, they returned the week after. We could hear the rifle shots. Pops tried to find them with the lawmen several times, but with no luck. Now, here's where all the information from the start comes into play. Pops, as hard as he tried, wanted them gone, but it wasn't working. Pops was also a fisherman, and his favorite bait were none other than the leopard frog. But because they made it on the endangered species list, the use was outright banned. Pops, being the responsible fisherman and generally caring about the land, figured, oh hell, now's the time to kill two birds with one stone. He approached the Canadian Fishery and Game Wardens and through a lot of work, got in touch with an ecological survey team who decided that our little marsh was the perfect place for a spawning pool to raise little leopard frogs. And that's what happened. The back area with our marsh was fenced in, and they started breeding tadpoles to brood in our marsh. Not only that, the poachers' hunting ground happened to fall in the protected zone. Once the work happened, it took a full year for the poachers to return. But Pops had a weapon now, his phone. Once he could hear that familiar sound of pew-pews going off where no pew-pew fire should be, he made a single phone call to the game warden. They had over a dozen wardens up there in less than an hour, and the poachers were caught. Not only were they caught with the carcass of a bear and other animals, they were found with buckets and buckets of our little leopard frogs. They were caught, but not only did they hunt without a license, they also poached an endangered species to be used as an illegal bait. From what I learned through the locals, they did 2 years in big-time prison. All because Pops cared about the little froggies. Oh yeah, over 5 million little frogs were raised on that marsh over 10 years, being released through marshes and forests in Ontario. You would have a hard time finding a leopard frog across Ontario that was not somehow related to a frog that came out of my little marsh. Well, your Pop sounds like an awesome person, and those poachers, well, they're the scum of the earth, and they deserved every little bit of punishment they got. This next story comes to us from Sean McLeod 1138, Burning Vengeance. Let's jump right in. First, some context. There's this product called Pure Cap, which is basically 100% capsaicin oil, the stuff that makes hot peppers hot. It has a Scoville rating of 500,000 units per drop, but no flavor, making it ideal for spicing up food without affecting the way it tastes. Putting enough of it, usually only a few drops, on any food can make it almost completely inedible to anyone who is not a total firemouth pepperhead. It's available on Amazon for about $30 per 2 ounces, but a little goes a very long way. That's why it's sold in an eyedropper bottle. Now, here's the good part. In the early 2000s, my brother Rick was working in a call center that had a break room with a fridge and freezer, a microwave, and a small sink. He didn't take his own lunch often, usually leftovers from the previous night's dinner, maybe 3 or 4 times a month. But every time he did, it would get stolen. The first couple times he didn't mention it, just in case it was a simple mistake and the person was too embarrassed to own up. However, the third time he remembered the military axiom: once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, but thrice is enemy action, and reported the thefts to his supervisor Don and the head of human resources Dolly every time after. However, they said that without proof there was nothing they could do, no cameras in the break room. And so this is where my plan hatched. One night, I made a roast beef dinner with potatoes and carrots, cooked all day in a crock pot with onion soup mix on top. Believe me, it was fork tender and delicious. I also made a nice salad to go with it and put away a complete dinner serving for him to have for lunch on his next shift. The next night, he came home and said his lunch had been stolen again. So the next morning, I made a really deluxe roast beef sandwich, thickly sliced with lettuce, pickles, cheddar, and mayonnaise on an 8-inch hoagie roll, so whoever was stealing would think they'd hit the jackpot 2 days in a row. I also loaded the roast with Pure Cap, like 4 droppers worth, about 30 to 40 drops on the meat alone, and made sure it was all completely absorbed before closing the sandwich, so the roast looked really juicy. I even mixed some into the mayo and put some more on the bread, because bread tends to downplay the fire a bit. Rick came in about halfway through the PureCap application and asked what the hell I was doing. I looked back with an evil grin and said, "Oh, just making a little present for the lunch thief." My grin was instantly copied on his face because he was the one who had originally told me about the stuff after he'd use it to prank a former roommate, so he knew what was going to happen. Then he went to finish getting ready for work. I could hear him chuckling the whole time. I even gave him $5 on his way out because that one sandwich shop with the green and yellow logo was only a couple blocks from his job and still had their $5 footlong promotion going. When Rick got home that night, his grin was even bigger as he related the events. He was between calls, only a couple hours into his shift, when suddenly there's this god-awful howling from the break room. Everyone who wasn't on a call right then, including Dolly, rushed in there to see the sandwich on the table with one bite taken out of it, the half-chewed bite laying right next to it, and Don at the sink, desperately trying to wash the capsaicin inferno out of his mouth, not knowing that water only makes it worse. Don was ostensibly friendly and reasonable, so he was well liked by his people. I guess he thought that would make some sort of difference because he pointed directly at Rick and yelled, "He tried to kill me," then went back to trying to put out his mouth fire with water. Dolly picked up the bag the sandwich had been in, which clearly had Rick's name in big red letters in his handwriting. She looked at Rick looked back with a completely straight face and shrugged. So Dolly grabbed the guy by the arm and dragged him to her office with him streaming tears and snot the whole way. By this time, the water had sent the PureCap into real overdrive, and Don had to just stand there and burn while Dolly and the call center's manager, Bill, dressed him down for about 15 minutes, finally ending it with his termination for theft. The guy could hardly even speak from the burning, tears, and runny nose that sandwich caused. And besides that, he had no defense anyway because he just outed himself for stealing an employee's lunch. The company had a zero-tolerance policy about that kind of thing, especially when higher-ups steal from the people they manage. Rick was back at his station and on a call when Bill personally came over smiling and said that Dolly wanted to see him when he was free. Rick gave a thumbs up, knowing fully well why she wants to see him, took the call to its conclusion, and went to Human Resources. Here's how he described the encounter. "You wanted to see me, ma'am? Yes, I do. First, being the aggrieved party, you're not in trouble. Second, what the hell did you put in that sandwich?" "Actually, my brother made it." He pulls the bottle of PureCap out of his pocket and sets it on Dolly's desk with a smile. Dolly picks up the bottle and reads the ingredients list, which literally just says capsaicin oil, 500,000 Scoville units per drop, bursts out laughing and hands it back. There was kind of really a lot of that in the meat and the mayo and the bread. Dolly was still giggling. "You know what? Go ahead and take your lunch break now, and when you get back, we'll talk about making you that section supervisor." So he did. Rick still says that was the most emotionally satisfying sub sandwich he's ever had. He declined the super position though, so they promoted a different person from that section, a really nice lady, Carrie, who had also witnessed the sandwich debacle. The whole office laughed about it for weeks afterwards, and every new hire for at least a year got to hear the story, as both entertainment and warning. I smiled about it for a month, and both Rick and I rarely miss a chance to tell people about PureCap and its potential applications regarding lunch thievery. I never did hear anything else about Don, but I imagine getting hired anywhere else, not to mention being promoted to a managerial position, was fairly difficult with that huge red flag for theft on his record. Now, OP added a little edit down at the bottom. It says, "Edit. Today I just asked bro about the incident and he's like, oh, I forgot to tell you." A couple days later, Don actually did try to accuse bro of attempted murder, but both Dolly and Bill went to bat for him. It turned out that Dolly herself had confiscated the sandwich and the errant half-chewed bite, wrapped them back up, sealed the package with duct tape, and put it in the back of the break room freezer with a note that said, "Do not touch." So when it was found that it had nothing spoiled or toxic, as well as only Don's DNA, Don got hit with charges of false accusation and filing a false police report, double, and had to pay for the legal fees and the cost of the testing. So apparently, the murder attempt charge got shut down hard. After that, bro wasn't interested anymore and asked to never be bothered about Don again, which Dolly, Bill, and the company lawyers happily agreed to. OP, this was a revenge story really well done. I think I would have changed it up just the slightest little bit though. I think I would have done the hot stuff right in the center of the sandwich, and then some laxatives on either end. So regardless of which end they started from, they'd get into the laxatives and probably not know that they were there, and then the hot stuff in the center would just hit them. Check out all 3 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.